Our third speaker of the day is actually a key part of the leadership team in the Faculty of Education, or the Faculty of Health Sciences, recently being promoted to the Interim Dean position there. Dr. Shannon Spenceley is an alumna and a passionate RN. Her Alberta roots are very deep. She's a graduate of Foothills Hospital in Calgary, and she graduated from all three of the U of L, the U of C, and the U of A. She's served as an elected provincial councillor and president for the professional regulatory body for Alberta nursing, known as CARNA. Prior to coming to the U of L, she was a senior leader in the former Chinook Health region and then the AHS in Southern Alberta. She was an educator at the bedside and in the classroom and researcher. Her research has focused on the nature, prevalence, and possible ways to reduce moral distress in nursing caregivers in long-term care settings, as well as other innovative models on community-based primary health care for vulnerable populations. So I'm pretty positive that this topic is going to intrigue everybody. Her last lecture is titled Strange Days, Thriving in Uncertain Times. So Shannon, the virtual floor is yours if you're there and ready.
I am here. Can you see me and hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. Okay, I would like to add my voice to honoring and acknowledging the past, present, and future contributions of all Indigenous peoples that continue to shape our university's destiny and make it stronger. I also am grateful that it is possible for us all to be here together today, celebrating our university's last lecture tradition on the traditional lands of the Blackfoot Confederacy. I also feel I must say that I wish to stand in heartbroken solidarity with those who live with the twin tyrannies of racism and discrimination, not only in the United States, but here in Canada as well. Black lives matter. Missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls matter. All those who face hatred and a harder road because of the color of their skin, I see you. And although I cannot walk in your shoes, I respectfully stand beside you in solidarity. Broken trusts and broken treaty relationships must be acknowledged, and we must all work to mend them. Thank you for inviting me. I am, as Adam said, I am Dr. Shannon Spenceley, Tony, and I'm so honored to be asked to deliver a last lecture. I am an associate professor, the acting dean in Faculty of Health Sciences, and a long-time registered nurse. I have given a few speeches in my day, and usually to calm my nerves, I imagine the audience in their underwear. It occurs to me in this instance that that might actually be true. So thank you for your cooperation. Such strange times we live in. I've driven my car, I don't know, maybe twice in the last 11 weeks, and I've acclimated to working from home. I find that the days run together a bit and that time sort of passes differently. Have you noticed that? I've also noticed that I crave foods that definitely fall into the comfort food, should never eat them, Shannon category. Salted caramel ice cream bars, salt and vinegar chips, big bowls of sugary cereal. I'm pretty sure that my COVID-19 is going to be the 19 pounds I have to lose when this is finally all over. Have you been craving anything? I bet I know one thing you're craving. You're craving certainty. We all are. You crave knowing what will happen, what's coming, what the future holds, who you should believe, how you will adapt, and you will adapt. Living with uncertainty feels awful. And today I plan to talk a little bit about why that is, and I will do my level best to impart some wisdom about things I have learned about moving forward in uncertain times in my 40-year nursing career. And you will move forward, and wow, the class of 2020 will really have a story to tell. So, I'm a nurse. I have to talk about biology first. So biologically speaking, uncertainty is understood to be a feeling of threat. When you are challenged by changes in the internal or the external environment, where you confront the question, what strategy can I use to safeguard my future physical, mental, and social well-being? And there really isn't a clear answer. So you feel a lack of control, and stress is the result. No information, no control, no clear course of action, and a sense of threat. That's uncertainty in a nutshell. When we feel uncertain and threatened, our brains first enter a state of acute arousal and hypervigilance, followed by activation of the sympathetic nervous system. You know, that part of the nervous system that makes your heart pound, your breathing speed up, your mouth dry when you're nervous when you're giving a speech, generally preparing you to respond to the perceived threat. This is your brain saying, holy cow, I need to do something about this uncertainty now. In the brain, this all takes place instantaneously because of a cascade of chemicals that flood the synapses and bring them to attention, enabling them to transmit information efficiently and quickly. Then there is the release of epinephrine that triggers chemicals to release blood sugar and fats from temporary storage sites in the body. At least I hope they're temporary. And all this to feed a hungry brain that's processing a lot of information. So these nutrients flood into the bloodstream, supplying energy to all parts of the body. When the pandemic was first declared, maybe you felt this sense of hypervigilance too. I know I went into very familiar territory, emergency nurse mode. I was actively seeking and taking in large volumes of information, making judgments and getting immediate things sorted out, moving quickly. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't stop my mind racing about the next steps, and I was ravenous for more information. I obsessed about the news, the daily briefings from Alberta Health, the federal government, and on and on. So in your body, as that initial surge of epinephrine subsides, a second system kicks in that keeps the sympathetic nervous system, the gas pedal, pressed to the metal. If the brain continues to perceive a threat, the hypothalamus releases hormones that start a cascade that result in the adrenals secreting cortisol, which keeps circulating glucose levels high to feed your greedy, hungry, information processing brain. And FYI, high cortisol levels can also stimulate overeating and cravings for sugary or fatty foods. So some of your cravings you can blame on your selfish brain. So our brain has some short-term solutions to reduce uncertainty. But we also know that when the stress response is repeated over time, or when a constant level of stress bubbles away in the background over long periods of time, there can be effects on our health. So dealing with uncertainty and stress, and all the stress that goes with it, is an essential skill set for all of us. Research outlines many adverse psychological and emotional outcomes as a result of the experiences that leave us fearful and uncertain. They're not nice. Anxiety, depression, addictive behaviors, PTSD, self-blame, even suicidality. Yes, we struggle with uncertainty. In fact, research shows that people actually prefer negative outcomes that are certain over living with uncertainty. So we're wired to crave certainty and to put bounds on uncertainty. And we can generally do that. Most of the time, catastrophic events like natural disasters, terrorist attacks, even epidemics are bounded in time and space, limited in duration, and affect maybe one or two areas of our lives. That's not the case right now. Every part of life, everywhere, is affected. Work, home, leisure, finances, health, and for an unpredictable amount of time. So are you cheered up yet? What can I possibly offer to relieve your craving for certainty? Well, truthfully, not much. My goal today is to share with you some thoughts I have over a 40-year career in nursing and academia that I have about thriving in uncertain times, which is surely what you are graduating into. And I'm really going to try hard not to sound like your mom. So first, the stress of uncertainty can hurt us. So what's my first recommendation to you? It's all about self-care. One of my favorite authors, Brené Brown, advises us to pay attention to the things that make us feel better and worse. That makes sense. You are your best source for that information. Physical activity, healthy eating, good sleep hygiene. These are incredibly important strategies that work for many and are eminently doable, even despite pandemic precautions. Rankin, Andrews, and Sweeney in 2020 studied the effects of an experience of awe on the anxiety experienced during times of uncertainty. They used videos of nature, sunrises, waterfalls, the northern lights, and it made a significant difference in lab measures of anxiety. So that's a lab study. But it makes sense to me that introducing a bit of awe into your life is never a bad idea. And finally, please hear me. If you find yourself struggling with overwhelming sadness, anxiety, or other unbearable feelings, please don't keep it to yourself. Don't struggle in isolation. Please know that we all need a little help and support from time to time. You aren't alone in that. Reach out to others, your family, your friends, or mental health supports. If you're searching beyond your own experience for self-care strategies, there is a lot published about different ways to reduce the stress and anxiety that accompany uncertainty, and you might want to try things you haven't tried before. Centering yourself, Grounding yourself with practices like meditation and mindfulness have been demonstrated to reduce that anxiety that goes with uncertainty. And they also nurture creativity and clarity of thought. Truly, these have always been strategies I've been meaning to try, but darn it, I've been too busy. It's ironic that the people that need it the most often don't do it for that reason. They're just too busy. I have started a mindfulness practice each morning, and I'm amazed to say that I feel much more centered, calm, and energized as I start my long Zoom meeting days. So if your first response is, oh, Shannon, really? I don't have time for that. You might need it more than you know. Second, see fake certainty for what it is. Bertrand Russell, the great British philosopher and social critic, wrote a powerful essay in 1933, written in a time that Hitler was in ascension, and it's eerily relevant to the world we occupy today. It was aptly called The Triumph of Stupidity. And in that essay, one of the things he said really speaks, I think, to the allure of fake certainty. Quote, "The fundamental cause of the trouble is that in the modern world, the stupid are cocksure, while the intelligent are full of doubt." Unquote. In uncertain times when people are fearful, it's truly seductive to follow those who feel strong, or those who sound clear, decisive, strong, and certain. As educated professionals, you will see fake certainty for what it is. Indeed, it's been my experience that the more you educate yourself, the more you realize that certainty is usually the territory of the frightened and the foolish. I have often said that the purpose of higher education is to teach you that you actually can't really be certain of anything. You've seen the hunger for fake certainty everywhere, in the conspiracy theories on social media, in the actions of snake oil salesmen that masquerade as leaders, hyping false cures and crazy notions like injecting disinfectant to kill the virus. That's a great idea. And I could go on. What I want you to remember is that the opposite of certainty is not uncertainty. The opposite of certainty is curiosity. It's asking questions, seeking answers that stand the test of science. It's resisting the false reassurances of those who claim to know when they have nothing but fake certainty to base their claims upon. What I suggest to you is that certainty is the death of scholarliness and a wet blanket for innovation and adaptability. Chilean biologist Humberto Maturana talks about the sin of certainty, how being certain of something is often the excuse to devalue, judge, blame, and enact violence upon those who don't agree with our very certain explanations. We see this all around us too. COVID-19 is the fault of others. It's the fault of the WHO. It's the fault of the Chinese people. It's those people working in meat processing plants. Surely they're to blame. Beware anyone who responds to a crisis by immediately telling you the solution and then telling you who is to blame. The other side of that is leaders in uncertain times that I really admire. They're the ones who are never afraid to admit they don't know the answer, or they're not sure about the best course of action, but they're not paralyzed by that. These leaders reach out to others, listen carefully, think deeply, and collaborate on solutions. My third piece of advice is control what you can. Set your GPS and know where you are going. Those winds and waves that are buffeting your journey can be scary, but they can also open your eyes to beautiful things. Things that you might have missed had you not surrendered just a little to the unexpected, the beautiful, the profound. Don't hanker too long for the way things were. First of all, it makes you sound like an old fart. And secondly, it can blind you to the amazing opportunities, creativity, and profound lessons that are emerging out of the darkness. The creativity alone is inspiring. Curbside concerts and performances. A nurse researcher at the University of Victoria who is having people living with dementia, their caregivers, and a group of high school students sing together in an intergenerational Zoom choir. They belt out World War II era songs together, a joyful way they are finding to reduce the stigma of dementia, reduce anxiety, and improve quality of life for those living with dementia. I've heard about graduate student supervisors in my own faculty holding Zoom meetings with their students that include dance breaks and story sharing. And how about the Joy for All initiative? It's a telephone hotline created by high school students in Calgary in grades 10 to 12. And it's a hotline created so that anyone needing a little lift can call a number to hear pre-recorded jokes, poems, stories, and messages from youth and children. How awesome is that? Hey, do you know why why koalas aren't actually bears? It's because they don't have the koalifications. And in all seriousness, I must finally and profoundly note the lessons we are learning as a result of the spotlight finally shining on our vulnerable citizens who call long-term care home. And believe me, I could talk for an hour just about that. Also, the burgeoning recognition that shallow celebrity does not equal greatness. The new heroes that we celebrate are those that eschew the spotlight: public healthcare professionals, healthcare aides, rec therapists who strive to make isolated life in long-term care more bearable, counselors who are helping people pick up the pieces, those who just put their heads down and sacrifice and serve. These are the stories and the people that we now, rightly, I think, aspire to emulate. Fourth, seek out friends and associates that make you better. If the isolation of the last few months has taught us anything, it's the power of social connection and how much we miss it when it's constrained. You may have heard the quote by motivational speaker Jim Rohn, who says that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It actually turns out it's a lot bigger than that. David Burkus researched the science of social networks in his 2018 book, Friend of a Friend. Researchers have found that we are all profoundly influenced by our social networks. For example, researchers Christakis and Fowler examined the data set from the Framingham Heart Study, which many of you have probably heard of. It's one of the largest and longest running heart health studies ever conducted. They started to see all sorts of connections that had to do with things way beyond heart health. They found that if one of your close friends became obese, you were 45% more likely to become obese yourself. Okay, maybe that's not all that surprising. But wait, if a friend of a friend became obese, even if you didn't know that friend, you were still 20% more likely to gain weight. And then, wait for it, 10% more likely to gain weight if a friend of a friend of a friend became obese. And that held true across a number of variables: smoking, even happiness. They found that hanging with happy people made you happier. Well, that's no big surprise. But it was kind of amazing to note that if a friend of a friend of a friend that you don't know is a happy sort, you still have a 6% greater likelihood of being happy yourself. So your whole social network influences you. So if you spend the most time with people that help you be healthier, think more clearly, and lift you up, chances are you will be healthier and think and feel better too. An important set of qualities and people to help you navigate uncertain times. So look around at your social network. I wager you have some of these positive people in your life right now. They might be people you're graduating with. They listen well, they question thoughtfully, they challenge you without diminishing you, and they help you see things that you might have glossed over the first time around. And if you're ever so lucky, they help you see the humor in the darkest of situations. And finally, be clear on your values. They will guide you when evidence and experience can't. The heart of the uncertainty right now lies in the indisputable fact that what we are living through is unprecedented in our lifetimes. Evidence and even experience will only take us so far. Science will guide us. It already is as we learn more about this virus, how to slow it down, and eventually how to beat it or prevent it. But as you know, good science takes time. So who do we listen to in the meantime? When the compass is spinning, set your true north. Clarify your values. Listen to the inner voice that asks you questions like, what's the right thing to do? What message do my actions send, and to whom? Who is helped by my actions? Who could be hurt? These are reflections that cut to your core values. This is the essence of what Polizzi calls acceptance-based coping. It's about that mirror we all look into when the proverbial poop hits the fan. It's times like we are in that boil off all the clutter and trappings and give us a chance to reflect on who we are, who we want to be, what we want to be known for, and what we hope others will say about how we responded in these tough times. So yes, we are all craving certainty, me included. We're wired to do that. but from my heart, I wish you an uncertain path. One that tests your mettle, demands your creativity, clarifies your values, and connects you with others in the adventure. All my best wishes, the class of 2020. Knock their socks off.
Wow, thank you very much, Shannon. That was a wonderful talk and wonderful advice for students on just how to cope in these uncertain times. I actually really appreciated myself how you brought up the curiousness of being an academic and how we should ask questions, and that's not the same thing as uncertainty, but you have to be clear that being certain isn't a good thing. We should always question. So that was a huge take-home message from you out of that talk as an academic. It's always a good reminder.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah. So the other thing I absolutely loved from that talk was your morning exercise you do to help yourself focus in all those Zoom meetings. I also have a lot of administrative meetings every day, and I've been walking my dog every once in a while in the morning to help with that sort of thing, to do the same kind of thing. And I think I'm going to start doing it even more often now.
Good.
So with that in mind, we have some time for some questions. And Jess Fair, I'm sure you probably do know Jess.
I do know. Hi, Jess.
Had a question for you. She said, thanks very much for the talk. And what are some of your self-care habits, and how do you calm down after a long day?
Okay, great question, Jess. I have a wonderful dog named Daisy. And after a long day, one of my favorite things to do is to take Daisy for a nice long walk. So that's one of the things I do to calm down. Other self-care practices, I normally love to travel. So I travel from my kitchen to the fridge, and my fridge to the couch. So I have a wonderful husband who is very entertaining. So he and I spend lots of time together on our back deck, enjoying the birds. I mean, one of the things that's really amazing, my husband in his career, he travels a lot. He's a big international travel, Jess, and you know that. He can't travel right now. So we get to spend lots of time together. And fortunately, that's a really good thing. And we are listening to birds and enjoying the blooming of our lilac, which we both usually miss because we're usually traveling somewhere. And there are gifts in the moment that are really helping me manage and cope through this. So thanks for the question, Jess.
I have to agree totally on that. My wife and I are home together all day too, and we actually kind of cherish those moments. I think there are frustrating times, I'm sure too.
Sure.
But it's really quite nice. So towards the end of your lecture, you mentioned that you didn't want to get into an hour-long conversation about what's going on in long-term care. So I hope I'm not going down a rabbit hole or asking, but how has the pandemic shone light on that, and what did you kind of mean by that comment?
Thanks for that question. My research area is in long-term care, as you mentioned in my introduction. And I have completed a couple of large studies examining the experience of people who work in long-term care and who want to provide great care to the people that are there, but are constrained by things in the environment, from being able to do what they feel is right by their residents. That bad feeling is called moral distress. And it's opened, I'm a nurse and I've worked in the system for a really long time. So I know that there's stresses and strains in long-term care. What my wonderful participants in my research taught me and my co-investigators, Dr. Sienna Kaspar, who's probably in the audience, one of my co-investigators, we learned that people who work in long-term care, first of all, they're usually trying to cobble together a full-time job by working in a whole bunch of different places. Because nobody wants to give them a full-time job because they don't want to pay them benefits. They are chronically understaffed. They often work short because people call in sick, and they are stretched so thin in their care environments, and it causes them anguish because they can't provide the care that they want to give. So layer on top of that the crisis of COVID-19, caring for a very vulnerable population, and you see a workforce that is absolutely overwhelmed. And we see the results in long-term care. So one of the things that I am grateful for, even though it's been gut-wrenching to hear what's going on in long-term care. It's way past time that the light was shone on those environments, and that the most vulnerable people in our society deserve better than what they've been getting for the last number of years. So that's what I meant.
Okay, that was a great answer.
Thank you.
One of the other things that's kind of I find really interesting is that, as you know, working at the university, and I always tell my students that our number one teacher that teaches us the most is our students, and I feel the same way about our colleagues. So, do you have any examples of maybe a way a student or colleague has kind of influenced how you think about and cope with uncertainty, and then what you've learned from them with respect to uncertainty?
Yes, absolutely. There is a student that I honor and think about every day. Her name is Alicia Ramus. She is a now graduate of our nursing program. Alicia was diagnosed with stage 4 cardiac angiosarcoma halfway through her 4th year of her nursing program. She dealt with uncertainty for months because they couldn't nail down a diagnosis. They couldn't tell her what to expect. She was too ill to study. We managed to, we pulled together a team, and we were able to facilitate her early graduation from the program. We held a ceremony for her in Calgary, which was an awesome, awesome, awesome experience. Most meaningful day, I think, of my whole career. And I got the opportunity to sit with Alicia and her family over a very long dinner the night before. And she told me some of her story about living with uncertainty, and how and Alicia's terminal. She's not going to live very much longer, but she has found the joy in her family, the magic in the little things that happen day to day. She cherishes the days she feels well, and she's 25 years old, and she's looking at the end of her life, and she sees joy in life despite the tragedy of her illness and the uncertainty that she lived with so many months. So Alicia's taught me a great deal in a very short period of time about how to cope with uncertainty and crisis and tragedy.
Thank you for sharing that touching story. We do have a question from the audience, from Ryan Waldorf. It seems like it's a political question, so I'm going to ask it.
Oh,
Like
Ryan.
Said, what do you make of Trudeau's 21-second delay?
Wow, was it only 21 seconds? It felt like a week and a half. Wow. Okay, I don't want to do a 21-second pause to answer that question, but it was powerful. And you could practically watch the war going on in his head about what he could say. And I appreciated him saying that we were watching in horror with what was going on in the United States. I was very moved by his 21-second pause, and I felt for him, actually. He's in a very tough spot with our largest trading partner and the economic elephant that's south of our borders. So he, I think, did his level best to speak truth to power. But yeah, that pause was something else.
Do we have any other questions from the audience for the Q&A section? Okay, with that said, thank you very much, Shannon, for
my pleasure.
the lecture.